If you're watching this video, it's fairly safe to say that you've seen a cartoon. It's also a safe bet to say that you've watched an animated movie. Maybe you've even seen some indie animation on YouTube or TikTok. So with your knowledge of this medium, what would you say is more important? The story or the animation? Well, this question isn't just for you, the viewer. In fact, this is something that is in question in the industry itself. But how would you even separate the two? Surely they come as a package deal. Let's start with the absolute basics and cover what scripts and storyboards actually are. A script is a form of story writing that is written in its own unique style and format that forgoes scene, character and location descriptions, and instead just tells the reader the dialogue and the most important actions in a scene. They are penned by screenwriters, who are the ones responsible for creating the entire narrative for the film or TV show, and then they are handed off to the relevant director and producers to turn words into footage. Most of the time, the script is the first part of the process, with storyboards coming next. The storyboards, or just boards for short, are a series of simple, undetailed images drawn by artists that use story ideas and scenes to show to a director or producer to outline how these moments could be visually translated. Or in simpler terms, the artists draw how the scene might look. These images are often accompanied by a small text box to tell the viewer what is happening in the moment, so that the artist can get the idea across in fewer panels. The text from these boxes are sometimes ripped directly from the script. But you might notice I said sometimes there. That's because for certain pieces of media like cartoons, the script isn't necessarily the starting point. So now we get to the terms script-driven and board-driven, and I think you can guess what they mean. But just in case you can't, and so I can draw this video out a bit, I'll give you a quick rundown. A piece of media being script-driven means that the script comes first. A story is researched, penned, developed and finalised before full storyboards are produced. However, if it's board-driven, the artist will draw out storyboards of scenes, shots or just ideas that they want to make. The story will then be written around these ideas. But what's the point of doing the boards first? Surely the story should be made first to keep a coherent plot. While that certainly is the case for a lot of films and shows, some animated projects can actually find this quite beneficial. By doing the boards first, it allows artists to push characters' posing and expressions to bring out emotional tone through the visuals, and not just through the dialogue. This then helps to streamline the script as a whole, as the boards show what the visuals alone can get across, and therefore what can be left out of the writing. So it sounds like board-driven animation is the way to go, right? Well, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Board-driven animation is a lot less common nowadays due to how the visuals are made. Boards are typically made in-house, meaning that they are produced in the studio. However, for TV, the finalised animation is often handed over to an offshore team, meaning ones who aren't directly a part of the studio and are usually a separate team or business in a completely different country. This means that it can be difficult to get notes to them, and so pushing the animation can result in a lot of lost time and therefore a lot of lost money. It's not just that though, the actual animation is handled completely differently now. A lot of modern animation uses rigs, which you can think of like a puppet. Sure, you can move the arms and head about a bit, but the framework will never change. This means that it can be hard to push a subject off model, as that would require either a new rig or complete hand animation, which bumps up the budget. Also, regardless of if it's 2D or 3D animation, most, if not all of it, is done on a computer. This sounds like it would help, since a computer can automate some of the process by creating in-between frames, or tweens, based on artist keyframes. However, this again means that it's harder to push the animation, and therefore it's harder to translate more out there ideas from the storyboards. So all of this only leads to one conclusion, that script-driven animation is better than board-driven, since you don't have to worry about these drawbacks as much. Well, not quite. The biggest drawback to script-driven animation is the audience's constantly changing priorities, and I include myself in this too. There have been some extremely well-written shows that have completely turned me off simply because of the animation, and let's be honest, you know exactly what show I'm talking about. Yeah, it's not great, but that's not the only one. Fairly Odd Parents is a quite well-known kids show that had a very well-documented fall-off in its later seasons. And while yes, that is partly due to the poor writing, it has to be said that the heavily rigged flash-style animation didn't help. Even the ever-popular MCU couldn't escape from this trap, as their project What If faced a hell of a lot of backlash just for the visual design and animation. But with all of that being said, I'm just some guy talking. How do we know any of this has worked? Well, let me show you some examples. We'll start here, since a lot of modern animation you'll see on TV or in the cinema will have a script as its starting point. You can see this in the newer Disney shows, Gravity Falls, The Owl House, Amphibia, Even goddamn DuckTales prioritised the plot before anything else. I've already mentioned What If, but other licensed properties have had this treatment too, such as X-Men 97, Your Friendly Neighbourhood Spider-Man, Creature Commandos, and Star Wars The Clone Wars, to name just a few. These shows are a particularly good insight into script-driven animation, as they all try to follow a similar style of resembling reality. Character movements can be stiff, weighty, and downright bad at times simply because it was more important to those creative teams to tell a good story first and foremost. As for board-driven animation, it's harder to pick out examples since they're often from older works. Before computer animation became the norm, shows and movies were animated on cells, which were large sheets of paper or plastic that the artist would draw their section onto before layering them to create the final frame of animation. Since it was all done by hand, it was a lot easier to push characters off model, especially for tweens artists who could create smear frames to further push the animation and visual style. This then brought along the idea to do the storyboards first, as it would allow for even more experimentation. Some of the most well-known shows that used this board-driven technique were Rocko's Modern Life, Ren and Stimpy, and of course SpongeBob SquarePants. Just don't overdo it. So how do we decide which is better? Well, we don't. As unfortunately boring of an ending as that is, it really comes down to what will be most beneficial for the individual creator on that individual project. What an anticlimax. See you next month. Bye bye. You might notice that it's quite late in the month, and by that I mean we're a day away from June. I did have a much bigger video planned for this month, but I procrastinated, and so I hope you enjoyed this video instead. As a little teaser for what that video will be though, take a listen to the music playing in the background right now. See you next time.
Can you swing from a thread? Take a look overhead.